My name's Iain English, Chief Operations Officer. I've never actually had a job in my life. I've always had my own businesses that I've started, and my love of property was a seed that was sown a very long time ago when I started my first business, which was making bespoke furniture and joinery. And it was really through installing the pieces that we had made into property. I was on building sites, and that was really the beginning, ultimately what led me to Rooms, and in fact through that business being able to acquire property myself. Rooms is a franchise business, and one of the benefits of a franchise rather than a standalone privately owned company is that we're a national brand, but the individual operators of the business own that business themselves. The difference there is that your clients get the benefit of someone who's really got skin in the game, whose livelihood depends on it, but they're also operating as a national company because they've got the backup of the branding and all of the systems and legal contracts, lots of support that means that they can operate as if they're actually a much bigger company than they are. It's very popular these days to start your own company, but in fact it can be very lonely. There's often not anyone around you can go to who's not charging you fees and will actually have your back. We support each other. That's within the network. Also, us as a franchisor, we support our franchise partners so that they're getting to the place that they want to get to. In terms of what we look for in a franchisee, we're looking for somebody who's got ambition and drive. Sometimes people will have experience in property or business, and that's great, but actually it's not necessary. The drive and the ambition will absolutely give us someone who we can really help to be successful. For us as a franchise business, it's really important that we support our franchisees from the beginning, but also hand-holding when opportunities come along to make sure that we stand the best chance of capitalising on every opportunity that comes along. So in the first 6 months, that's exactly what we do, is we really hand-hold the process of operating the communications strategy and the marketing strategy so that when the smallest of opportunities comes along, we want to make every opportunity count as much as possible. If you've put the work into communicating effectively, then you're still going to have created a relationship that can then bear fruit later. Our role in helping a new business is to make sure that they stay focused on our proven strategies for generating new business, to support them step by step in those early stages so that they can build their confidence and then really work that, nailing that from the beginning and supporting them with that. The property market and the property arena in general is always changing in terms of compliance, in terms of finance. What we do is we'll always keep an eye out for new ways of doing things. If we felt there was some merit, sometimes things can come along as if they're a new idea when in fact they've happened before and maybe aren't a great idea. A lot of what we do look for is ways in which we can support our franchise partners' pathway to property ownership as well as property management. A lot of people who come on board are passionate about property, and in fact a lot of people want to own property, and this is a route to being able to achieve that. And that's a significant part of opportunities which can come about through changes in the marketplace, and spotting those and then sharing with the network how to capitalise on those is absolutely what we do. Some people ask questions about the competitors and how do we remain competitive. I think the first thing that I would say about that is that actually there's a lot less competition than you might imagine, particularly if you make sure that you add value, solve problems for people, make it enjoyable for them, and just give heaps of service. If you do that, then really there's very little competition. In terms of staying in touch with our franchise partners, one reason for doing that on a regular basis is to keep an eye out for incremental improvements, incremental gains that can be achieved for the business. Sometimes we look for the big things, the large sums of money, the big deals or the big losses, but actually an awful lot can be gained and quite sustainably retained if you focus on the smaller items and then just keep working through and trying to find other items that you can improve on. And it sharpens everybody's focus so that your whole team is actually keeping an eye out for where the business could be losing money. We'd all like to imagine that businesses just make money, but actually while you're busy making money, it's very easy for them to simply be losing money behind the scenes. And so incremental gains is quite important from that aspect. The best way to scale a business is running the operations that we have in the franchise, and simply, if you want to do it faster, you just increase the activity. So if you want to scale your business, The ambitious person will just do more of those activities and the results just happen. It seems a bit like magic. It's really not. It's as simple as that. For a new franchise partner, the investment in rooms we've kept it relatively low in terms of the franchise fee. So initially it's a £6,000 payment, followed by monthly payments of £1,000 payments. In addition to that, you also of course need some operating capital. How much depends on how quickly you want to grow the business, and will usually be between £15,000 and £25,000. The total £12,000 that you pay for your franchise, that covers a tremendous amount of very intensive training and covers the compliance that you need to meet, the marketing strategy, sales process, and in fact the whole communication strategy and setup of your business. It covers all of those things. When I'm helping franchise partners, one thing I like to refer back to is risk. Although it's not a sexy subject, it's a really important subject. It can have quite an impact over time on profit. It can also impact on your mental health, and I always think it's important to enjoy business. And so I like to help people enjoy running their own company, and the risk of not enjoying it, if you like, is one of the ones that we focus on sometimes. And to talk about saying, well, sometimes it's better to avoid a certain type of business and be happier that way. And that falls into our method of incremental gains as well, to always be looking to reduce the risks and try and retain the profit margins rather than letting them trickle away as they want to try and do. We sometimes have people who have been on property training courses for operating a rent-to-rent business model. They compare buying a franchise with what they've learned at the training sessions. And by way of a difference, sometimes people ask, what is the difference between buying a franchise or going on the training course? And it's vast. Just to say that, it's vast, because as a franchise business, as the name suggests, you are starting a business. You're not just learning how to do something, you're creating a vehicle for generating wealth. It's not just a property deal. What you're doing is you're building value with your network of clients, and we very much encourage our franchise partners to invest in property, to use the profits from their business to invest in property. But actually, business itself is where you can make the most wealth in the short space of time. So we very much are holistic in terms of how we approach what we train our franchise partners in. It covers a lot more depth than you would get in a 1, 2 or 3 day training session with a property training company. There's a lot of the legal aspects and the compliance aspects and finance and insurance. I mean, the list goes on of the subjects which we cover in our training, which wouldn't be covered in your typical property training on rent to rent. We do have an exciting piece of news about rooms. We initially started the business as a disruptor in the marketplace as a rent-to-rent operator. And since that time, we've perfected a lot of the operations so that it's effective in managing what is a rather different property type. And we're going to be launching our agency model. There's a lot of agents who manage HMOs, but it's normally only a small part of what they do in their business. Although there's similarities, there's also some quite significant differences. If you're not familiar with the differences, that can lead to tenants being unhappy about how things are being run, landlords being unhappy about what happens with their property, the voids, the maintenance, these details. And so we've decided that this is the right time for us to come out onto the high street and actually operate as a specialist in the HMO shared house sector. An HMO landlord may find themselves in a position where they're comparing two different scenarios, either a rent-to-rent agreement with an operator or a letting agent who's offering management service. And if we were to ask the question, what's the difference and which is going to benefit a landlord better, a lot of landlords really value the rent-to-rent model because it simply doesn't take up any of their time. Often with an agent, you'd like to think, because you're paying fees, that they're going to do all the work for you. But because of the nature of the contract where they're operating as an agent, they have to have your consent to decisions. So you're always on call really to be thinking about the business and the tenants that they've found. If we're weighing up whether or not a rent-to-rent agreement or a managed agreement is better for a landlord, it'll often be preference. It might be that a landlord prefers what they're used to, but for a lot of landlords, the real freedom of not needing to be concerned with the day-to-day running of their property is a real attraction.